SpaceX has used up a Falcon booster 3 times this month, which is an odd internal record for a company that is known for making rockets that can be used more than once. Since 2018, SpaceX's oldest active Falcon 9 rocket booster has been in use. It made its last flight on Tuesday night to send a Eutelsat broadband communication satellite into orbit. The satellite's job is to give airplanes and ships in the North Atlantic, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa access to the internet. Since the beginning of September, Eutelsat has launched 4 big satellites in a row. But what's their plan behind all these launches? Why are they now launching the 3rd Falcon booster? Welcome to Smarter Tech for all interesting, trending technology news, most especially SpaceX news. We keep you updated always, and without further ado, let's get started. At 9:57 p.m. EST Tuesday, the Falcon 9 rocket carrying the Eutelsat 10B satellite took off from Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Eutelsat 10B is on its way to a spot in geostationary orbit where it will be able to send communication signals from the North Atlantic to Asia using more than 100 spot beams to connect airline and cruise ship passengers, maritime crews, and other mobile users. SpaceX said a Monday night launch attempt had to be cancelled. Eutelsat 10B is on its way to a geostationary orbit where it will be able to send communication signals from the North Atlantic to Asia using more than 100 spot beams to connect airline and cruise ship passengers, maritime crews, and other mobile users. SpaceX said a Monday night launch attempt had to be cancelled to allow for additional pre-flight checkouts, and SpaceX went ahead with the launch Tuesday night even though forecasters said there was a 90% chance that the weather wouldn't be good enough. The first stage of the 229-foot-tall Falcon 9 rocket was not tried to be recovered by SpaceX. The launch company had an agreement with Eutelsat to dedicate all of the Falcon 9's lift capability to sending the Eutelsat 10B satellite into as high of an orbit as possible without reserving the propellant on the first stage for landing maneuvers. About 35 minutes after launch, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket carried out the deployment of Eutelsat 10B. The launch vehicle was intended to place the satellite into a transfer orbit known as supersynchronous, which would have an apogee far higher than Eutelsat 10B's final operating height of 22,000 miles. According to Pascal Homsy, Eutelsat's chief technical officer, the goal apogee for the Eutelsat 10B mission at spacecraft deployment was above 37,000 miles. Before we continue, hold up. If you're watching us for the first time, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can enjoy our future videos while getting updated. Getting back to the topic, the Falcon 9's first stage booster burned its 9 main engines a few seconds longer than usual, providing the rocket's upper stage an extra speed boost rather than saving some of its propellants for a drone ship landing. This made it possible for the second stage engine of the Falcon 9 to launch the Eutelsat 10B satellite into a higher orbit than would have been possible otherwise. SpaceX would still recover the Falcon 9 rocket's payload fairings 2 halves for repair and reuse. The placement of the satellite into a supersynchronous transfer orbit will save the time it takes to reach its ultimate operational geostationary orbit by around 10 days, according to a spokeswoman for Thales Alenia Space, the maker of Eutelsat 10B. The GTO will be super-synchronous due to B-1049's death, which means that the upper end of the elliptical orbit will probably end up being roughly 60,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. A super-synchronous GTO makes it possible for a satellite to circularize its orbit more effectively, using less propellant in the process. Due to the comparatively low cost of geostationary station keeping, even little propellant savings can lengthen a satellite's lifespan and increase the maximum amount of money it can make during its lifetime. Despite the fact that Eutelsat certainly had to fork over additional cash, perhaps in the tens of millions of dollars, for SpaceX to launch B-1048, the benefits must outweigh that additional cost. Following the deliberate detonations of a core stage on Falcon Heavy rocket on November 1st and a Falcon 9 booster on a mission on November 12th, the disposable Falcon 9 flight represented SpaceX's 3rd disposal of a Falcon rocket booster this month. 2 communication satellites were launched on November 12 for Eutelsat, who claimed to have paid more for the Falcon 9's enhanced performance, which led to the booster's decommissioning in the Atlantic Ocean. According to Homesy, in answer to written inquiries from Spaceflight, now they stated that Eutelsat chose an expendable booster for this mission because of the mass of the satellite, which required the entire capacity of fuel and extra performance of the Falcon 9 rocket for a correct orbit injection. Unsurprisingly, Homesy refused to disclose whether or how much Eutelsat paid SpaceX for the improved Falcon 9 performance in the Eutelsat 10B mission. Next year, Eutelsat 10B will enter a geostationary orbit and direct itself to a working location 10 degrees east of the equator. In the heavily traveled North Atlantic corridor between Europe and North America, the satellite will increase the capacity for internet access services for ships and airlines. According to Eutelsat, the satellite's owner and operator with headquarters in Paris, Eutelsat 10B will also offer comparable services over Europe, the Mediterranean region, and the Middle East. 2 multi-beam high-throughput Ku-band payloads are carried by Eutelsat 10B for maritime and aviation internet services. According to Eutelsat, these 2 payloads feature 116 spot beams that can process more than 50 GHz of bandwidth and provide a throughput of about 35 gigabits per second. How interesting. Moreover, the satellite carries 2 broad beams of C-band and Ku-band payloads to supplement the aging Eutelsat 10A satellite's 2009 launch delayed services. According to Homesy, Eutelsat 10B will start operations in the summer of 2023. With the launch of the Eutelsat 10B, Eutelsat launched its 4th sizable communication satellite in the previous 2.5 months, following the launch of the Eutelsat Connect VHTS satellite on an Ariane 5 rocket in September. In October and earlier this month, 2 Hotbird TV broadcasting satellites were launched from Florida aboard Falcon 9 rockets and added to Eutelsat's fleet. Homesy described the difficulty as quite a challenge for the Eutelsat engineering people who have been up to the challenge. On the other hand, 1 million pounds of kerosene and liquid oxygen propellants were loaded into the Falcon 9 rocket on Tuesday night during the final 35 minutes before liftoff. The 9 Merlin 1D main engines of the first stage booster flashed to life with an igniting fluid called triethyl aluminum or TTEB after teams confirmed all technical and meteorological criteria were green for launch. Hydraulic clamps released the Falcon 9 to launch into orbit once the engines reached full power. The 9 main engines propelled the Falcon 9 and Eutelsat 10B into the high atmosphere, generating 1.7 million pounds of thrust for more than 3 minutes. The booster stage then stopped and detachment from the upper stage of the Falcon 9 started an uncontrolled fall into the Atlantic. The booster was not equipped with SpaceX recovery equipment like landing legs or titanium grid fins. Moreover, SpaceX chose not to send out 1 drone spacecraft for the pointless expedition. After the nose cone's 2 clamshell parts parachuted into the water downrange from Cape Canaveral, a SpaceX recovery ship was on standby to collect the payload fairing from the Falcon 9 rocket. Approximately 3.5 minutes into the flight, soon after the upper stage engine of the Falcon 9 was ignited, the payload fairing separated from the rocket. The Eutelsat 10B satellite was released from the Falcon 9 rocket after its upper stage engine fired twice to place the spacecraft in an elliptical supersynchronous transfer orbit. To circularize its orbit as geostationary height or about 22,000 miles above the equator, Eutelsat 10B will unfold its solar panels and start maneuvers using an onboard electrical propulsion system. But it seems off late, SpaceX has been culling the herd. On November 1st, during the enormous rocket's first launch since June 2019, SpaceX purposefully destroyed one of its 3 Falcon Heavy boosters, B-1066, starting an unprecedented culling of its rocket herd. SpaceX has attempted to recover the central core of the Falcon Heavy 4 times but has never been successful. This pattern seems to be staying the same for a while as a number of launches in 2023 are expected to necessitate greater Falcon Heavy performance. Then, on November 12, SpaceX used Falcon 9 booster B-1051 to launch Intelsat's Galaxy 31 and Galaxy 32 satellites into a related supersynchronous transfer orbit. After the death of B-1049 on November 22, SpaceX has used a record-breaking 3 Falcon boosters in a single month. In June 2018, SpaceX purposefully used 2 Falcon rockets for the first time. SpaceX rocket fleet now contains 14 Falcon boosters with flying experience with an average of 8.7 launches per core. Within the next few months, at least 2 new reusable boosters, B-1076 and B-1078, will join the fleet. Can't wait to see the specs on the new boosters. Anyway, how much do you think Eutelsat had to offer SpaceX to expand B-1049? Do you think all of this is worth it? Is SpaceX doing their best? Comment down below. Also, please leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos. Goodbye!